We were speaking whilst I was in New York, and I went to an NFL game. So tell me why rugby is superior to the NFL.
Oh, well, you've put me on the spot. The opening gambit, Ferg. I mean, if that's the starting point, where are you going to take me after this? Well, look, I think both have their values. They're different games, aren't they? Yes, there's physicality. The ball's the same shape. People go for speed and skill and power and that physicality, the tackling. I guess they are incredibly different sports, because in rugby you couldn't have human beings the size that a lot of these NFL guys are, because it's a different challenge on, you're the expert when it comes to physiology and, the physics around it, but trying to move somebody around who is, I don't know, 400 pounds, whatever it might be, for 60 minutes maybe in a game of rugby, and high intensity for an anaerobic for short periods, that's going to be tricky, right? But I think there's joy in both. What I would say is that a great game in the NFL and a great game in rugby are both mega to watch, and it gives fans something to get engaged with. I would say that what rugby needs to learn from the NFL is turning it into the event, because I'm sure you can give some first-hand experience, but I went to the first ever NFL game at Wembley.
Yep.
And just the way that the Americans do the event, the showbiz element, the entertainment around it is different. And I want, would rugby be a better game if there were 4 quarters with some entertainment in between that draws more people into it? Possibly. Would it take away from the endurance part of the 80 minutes? Maybe, but could that actually solve some of the challenges around, the injuries that happen, I guess, in both games? But I like tuning into the occasional game of NFL. I obviously love my rugby, but I think rugby needs to continue to look as to how it evolves to grow the game. And the World Cup's going to be in the US in 8 years' time.
Yep.
It needs to be a game that isn't alien to the population of 350 million or whatever it is in the US.
Plenty. I think a population of plenty. The reason I ask is because of a lot of the things that you touch upon there, I find myself thinking about when you look at the state of play that rugby's in the UK, and my overwhelming takeaway from watching Jamie play in the NFL at the New York Giants Stadium was, this is a business, not a sport. Whereas in the UK, everything's sport-led, business second. And rugby as a business in the UK is not necessarily on its feet as much as it has been in the past. So given that you're still in the game from a punditry point of view, you obviously have a lot of friends still in the game, you're very much keeping a close eye on it. What do you see the biggest changes being from a fans, business, engagement, relationship, the spectacle and the show business around it from your time playing versus now? Where do you see the crux of the issues being with rugby struggling as it is? Well,
look, you highlight the business element, and it's not a surprise to anybody when you see the Premiership, the impact on the Premiership, and now down to 10 teams. So a couple of teams have gone to the wall because they've been run as sports clubs, not as businesses. And whether that's the salary capping, there's a multitude of different elements. It's sad to see, because England has the greatest pool of players anywhere in the world. And for a large number of players, that's their livelihood gone, because there's only so many positions in the game now in England that people can go to. The academy system, people have been chewed up and spat out by that. Now, you saw, I don't know if you would have seen the big game 15 down at Twickenham, Harlequins against Gloucester, DJ beforehand, firing everything up, light show, music, turn it into an event. That's a step forward, but we need that in the Six Nations. We need that in World Cup games, draw in this audience, make it that event. Now, the changes from, I stopped playing 10 years ago. It was August last year that, I was told I was done. And 10 years has gone by, a lot's changed. The game's changed slightly, the laws have changed a bit, nuance changes to the laws. Social media is a big thing. And for me, I think like rugby's greatest asset is the fact that it's the ultimate team sport. Yes, don't get me wrong, there's the shapes and sizes are a little bit more standard now, rather than it being a game for all shapes and sizes.
The sad reality being that 12s look like 6s.
Well, exactly, right?
You've got wingers running that could play in the front row.
Yeah, exactly. But there's still a place for Darcy Graham. There's still a place for Weenie Antonio at 145 kilos. Darcy at 80 kilos soaking wet, probably. So I think for me, so the ultimate team game, but a game whereby individuals aren't given the opportunity to showcase themselves, because I've done a load of interviews with a number of Kiwis, and they're typically really not great at talking about themselves, because it's all about the team first. They're no dickheads culture, and I think that's one of the areas whereby we need personalities to be able to step forward. You need Ellis Genge to be allowed to unleash himself. We've seen it a little bit with Joe Marler. Imagine, Big Jim, who we both know, like great pal of mine, former teammate. Big Jim wasn't allowed to be Big Jim when he was playing rugby, because if he was Big Jim and, albeit social media was on an upward curve, not where it is now when he was still playing, but if he was that way and then he had a bad game on a Saturday, someone would tell him that it's because he was, being Big Jim.
Yeah.
That's the way he was behind the scenes, but if he was stuck in front of the media, he would have to toe the party line. And, I remember going into media interviews with a sheet of paper telling me what the key messaging was, right? And so therefore, I think this balance of understanding that unions, clubs need to protect themselves from being exposed by, unleashing a rogue who says something a little bit, against the norm that gets picked up and turned into a headline, but also giving people the platform to be themselves. I think that's where social media, the people who are good at it, are starting to really work that out.
I think so. I think, again, going back to the NFL comparison, because that was my overarching takeaway, was this is just a different league in terms of that exact point. They had highlights of what specific players were wearing as they were coming in off the bus, what cars they were driving in, all this, like, ooh, it's almost a bit tabloidy.
Yeah.
But Jim can talk on any subject matter, the way he discusses things on the podcast, and he's creative director for World Rugby now, which is obviously a great position to be in on this topic. But there's so many personalities in rugby. My playing time was cut short because of too many concussions, and I was never going in a particular direction beyond recreational level. But I love the game. I think character building wise, the range of athletic ability that I have has come from rugby. And it's something I definitely want my kids that do not yet exist to play in the future. But I often find myself thinking, does the game have the legs for that to actually be as accessible a reality as it was for me growing up? And I'm not sure. Yeah,
look, I think it's not comparing apples with apples, NFL to rugby, right? You've got, but in order to grow the game, you've got to grow the commercial value of the game. You've got to be able to grow the value of your assets, which are your players, and you've got to then be able to commercialize that. And I think until you get exposure, the NFL do it so well when you're getting some, the in-game insights from some of the people playing. But also, for big sponsors, they want to know that they're going to get access to, and it's going to be covered in the media, that they're going to actually get value for what they're doing. But you only create that value by giving the access to the players behind the scenes. We'll see in a couple of weeks' time what happens with the Six Nations Netflix, right? Well, that'll be a behind the scenes. As I understand it, there was some behavioural shifts in some of the players when a camera's in front of them, right? And maybe trying to, put themselves across as being slightly different, even to the person who their teammates know, right? Because there's a platform. So even that should hopefully be a shift forward and give people insights into what it is. But still, that's only scratching the surface around. I've got the old Gloucester Boys WhatsApp group, and honestly, it has me in tears of laughter the majority of the time when you've got guys like Big Jim, Andy Hazel talking, and Luke Narroway talking absolute nonsense, torching the same boys that were playing alongside them 10 years ago. Those are the things that light me up. But if even if you got 50% of that to the fan base, to the commercial partners, to the broadcasters, and you can see them trying to move things forward, then it would change the game.
Yeah, the reason I brought up the comparison is just because it's fresh in my mind, and it's great to get insights from somebody that still has been in and is now still in, but in a different capacity of the game. Because it makes me it's that the future of the game I'm concerned for. It doesn't keep me up at night, but I know how much value I've got from it personally. So I very much hope for the longevity of the game we find solutions to these problems. And I thought I was truly blown away with the lens of, wow, this is a business, not a sport, that I experienced just recently when we were last chatting.